Good morning, Nigeria. Welcome to Daybreak, reaching you live from the nation's capital. I'm Zainab Bala.
Hello, good morning and welcome to Daybreak on Trust TV. I am Ibrahim Yusuf.
Our headlines for you this morning. 2023 appropriations, reps decline consideration of foreign affairs budget over infractions.
Boko Haram insurgency, Zulum awards 300 million naira scholarship to 300 orphans.
EFCC raids Kano's forex market, arrest BDC operators.
Now the details. And at least 8 Bureau de Change BDC operators have been arrested following the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission EFCC raid on Wapa Forest Market in Kano. It was gathered that operatives of the Kano Command of the Anti-Graft Agency stormed the Forex Market Tuesday evening with about 8 vehicles and heavily armed personnel. The situation which threw the market into pandemonium. This came after marketers in Kano said they heard that the Anti-Graft Agency had earlier swooped on their colleagues in Abuja, arresting some in relation to the recent hike in dollar at the parallel market. Confirming the operation, a senior staff of the agency said the raid was conducted as part of the agency's efforts to support the federal government to arrest the recent hike of foreign exchange.
In other news, Borno State Governor Professor Babagana Umar Zulum on Tuesday flagged off a scholarship scheme worth 300 million in support of 300 orphans whose parents died as volunteers under the Civilian Joint Task Force Vigilantes and Hunters. The volunteers were involved in fighting Boko Haram and ISWAP alongside the Nigerian military and other armed forces in Borno State. Zulum at the launch held at the multi-purpose hall of the government house in Maiduguri said the 300 million would cover all educational needs of the 300 orphans throughout their basic education levels in the first stage before further support at future levels of education. The governor had during his 2020 budget presentation promised support for the orphans under the Borno Hero Support Program.
And to legislative matters now, where the House of Representatives Committee on Foreign Affairs on Wednesday declined to consider the budget proposals of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs over what it described as administrative infractions and non-adherence to the Appropriation Act. The lawmakers during the ministry's budget defense accused the minister of asking foreign missions not to comply with several communications sent by the House of Representatives. The lawmakers noted that the refusal by missions and embassies to constitute their tender board and render an account of their administrative charges following the directives of the minister is against Section 10 of the Appropriation Act. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Geoffrey Onyema, in his response, denied the accusations by the lawmakers, adding that at no time did he issue directives to officials of his ministry, embassies and missions abroad to disregard the directive of the National Assembly. The lawmakers, however, resolved not to consider the proposed 2023 appropriation of the ministry pending when all missions are directed to comply with Section 10 of the 2022 Appropriation Act as amended.
We have called the attention of the minister to this act, but he has continued to direct the missions not to obey this law in spite of receiving about 4 letters on the issue, including the latest one of 6 September 2022. In addition to the above, Section 7 of the Appropriation Act 2022 as amended captures inter alia that the Minister of Finance shall ensure that funds appropriated under this act are released to the appropriate agencies and or organs of government as and when due, provided that no funds for any quarter of the fiscal year shall be deferred without prior waiver from the National Assembly. In total disregard for the above, the ministry has continued to direct missions to retain and spend monies in their capital accounts without any waivers from the National Assembly. A 23rd September 2022 letter by this committee that was sent to the ministry as a reminder to earlier ones still did not stop the ministry from flouting the laws of the land. Being aware that administrative charges have been approved at the missions by Mr. President, this committee, in line with Sections 80, 3 and 4 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended, has also observed that in total disregard to what the law says, the minister has continued to authorize the spending of monies generated through administrative charges at the missions without being appropriated by the National Assembly.
We have given the directives, I've signed up on it, that they can set up, as you said, Mr. President has assented to it, so we have no problems. We're not flouting it in any way, and I have certainly never sent or signed anything to any mission to tell them to disregard those requirements.
Well, there you go. Now, moving on to more news. The Federal Executive Council again turned its attention on the East-West Road, approving an upward adjustment of construction of sections 1 to 4 of the road from 246 billion and now to 506 billion. Work on the affected sections of the road will be from Warri to Port Harcourt at Eket and at Oron, and will include the Oron-Eket bypass and will cost government 260 billion. The Cabinet approved also on Wednesday the contract for the dualization and reconstruction of the Kano-Kwana-Ganja-Hadija Road at the sum of 94 billion. Kaindia Modu reports.
With President Muhammadu Buhari away for 2 weeks of medicals, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo is taking charge of this hybrid Federal Executive Council meeting. The road contracts approved are aimed at effecting repairs on damages on the East-West Road caused by the recent flooding.
So the approval was for the a variation order for the East-West Road project sections 1 to 4 from Warri to Port Harcourt, Eket, Oron, including Oron-Eket bypass, in the sum of 260 billion, thereby increasing the total contract sum for the outstanding sections 1 to 4 of the East-West Road projects from the sum of formerly of 246 billion now to 506 billion.
There is also an approval of the award of contracts for urgent repairs and special general maintenance of a few roads nationwide.
The Minister for Works and Housing also got approval for the award of contract for the dualization and reconstruction of the Kano-Kwana-Ganja-Hadija Road in Kano and Jigawa states, section 2, Kano to Sala. This was approved to the amount in the sum of 94 billion naira, inclusive of 7.5% VAT, with a completion period of 24 months.
Meanwhile, the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation was given the go-ahead to secure partnership on the upgrade, equipping, operating and marketing of the Space Museum and Planetarium. The buildings meant for this project had been in place since 2018, but funds to put the necessary equipment in place have not been forthcoming. Of course, there will be the question about if the ministry, which had promised manufacturing of pencils as far back as 2019, had been able to meet up with this basic project.
The update I can give you is that, yes, already pencils have been manufactured in that place, to the best of my knowledge. My colleague, the Minister of State, visited about a month ago, and the report he brought back, he physically visited the place, and the report is that, yes, the process of manufacturing of pencils is on as we speak.
Also on Wednesday, the Minister of Agriculture gave assurances that adequate preparations had been put in place to ensure that there would be no shortage of food as a result of the recent flood. To tackle insecurity, the minister unveiled plans to recruit additional agro-rangers who would provide some measure of security on farmlands. From State House, Abuja, Kaindia Mudu, Trust TV News.
And residents of Makurdi in Benue State have described extrajudicial killings in the form of jungle justice as evil. This follows recent mob action in a community in the state capital, which resulted in the killing of a suspect. The report.
The residents, mostly youths, in the Benue State capital, Makurdi, said lack of trust in government agencies like the police to serve justice accounts for increased cases of jungle justice. They are, however, hopeful that something can be done to respect the rights of suspects.
But the challenge we're facing concerning jungle justice is in dual form, and the security are the major culprit in this. Because very often, sometimes one who has done something is caught, and security people will free that person to go. Now you see people moving about with bottled up reactions. But if everybody is not angry, we have minimal tempers, we have people who are not outrightly to react to what might have hitherto happened to them. You will see that anything that rises tempers, people will first of all calm down to establish the truth.
The residents condemned the act and their citizens to find other ways of handling suspected criminals. They also said the era of jungle justice is over because civilization has provided many options.
The jungle justice is met by people who have engaged in very, very petty things like stealing, snatching of phones and all that. And you see that the real criminals that have caused our society the damage, the real damage, are very, very untouchable. So for me, it's a no, no, no. And if it was in my power, I would do everything to avoid it, prevent it at every angle in existence.
And I think the societies too should look at it and try to move away from that act. If a person does a wrong thing, there are people who should take care of that. We have security agencies who take care of those kinds of things. Call on the police and let them take care of the matter, not you taking laws into your hands.
We have laws that are guiding our society and our country. So jungle justice is just like we are taking laws into our hands, which cannot bring any solution. We should condemn it totally. The security agencies in our country should do more to make sure jungle justice has been stopped.
Despite calls by civil society organizations and NGOs for human rights protection in communities, the cases of extrajudicial killings or jungle justice have continued to rise in recent times.
Now, a few months to the 2023 elections in Nigeria, political campaign posters are taking over available public space in the commercial city of Kano. Trust TV correspondent Idris Jibril reports that some residents, however, suggest that politicians should rather employ result-oriented campaign rather than printing campaign posters.
4 months from now, Nigerians will head to the polls to elect their state and federal representatives. In the politically sensitive Kano state, all entry and exit points, marketplaces and big roundabouts, posters of party candidates are everywhere, and voters are expecting the politicians to do more in fulfilling their campaign promises.
Na farko akwai amfani da ake so a yi da matasa.
The first thing is that there is the intention of using youth to win election and the consideration of constituency influence. Therefore, voters need to pay closer attention as to who they are supposed to vote.
Dole abin yana da buƙatar gaskiya mutane su tsaya su san irin wannan irin shugabanni za su zaba.
Although campaign posters are to communicate to voters on the intention and plans of candidates, they often help people to get to know about who is contesting for what. However, voters say it's not the posters that matters.
While
candidates have all came out looking for voters, however, what I would say is that we have made a mistake of not involving God in politics before now, believing that our candidate knows it all. But most people have now realized the previous mistakes and hoping that God will help us. Before now, we thought that the politicians will make things easier for us. Unfortunately, the reverse is the case. We vote in 2015, believing that Buhari will make things easy for us, but he didn't as we expect. As campaign continues across many parts of the state, campaign posters carrying various messages that may evoke hopes seems to be increasing across the state. Idris Jibril, Trust TV News, Kano.
And still talking politics, the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Peter Obi, says he will immediately discontinue the fuel subsidy regime if he becomes the country's leader, describing it as an organized crime which is only benefiting a few rich Nigerians. Obi, who spoke on Wednesday at the headquarters of the Media Trust Group in Abuja, said the concept of subsidy, right from records of consumption of fuel, was steeped in corruption. The Labour Party presidential candidate also spoke on other pressing issues. Yusuf Akogu reports.
It appears that all the presidential candidates of the 4 leading political parties are in agreement that fuel subsidy must go. The question is how soon, considering that the present administration had set the exit date for subsidy for June next year, the month after it leaves office. For the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, exiting subsidy will be an immediate thing so that proper investment could be made in sectors that need to be invested in.
Subsidy is organized crime. I will not allow any form of criminality as president of Nigeria. A, the amount of fuel they say we consume cannot be consumed by this country. There's an empirical evidence. We are about the same size as Pakistan. Pakistan, we are about 210, 220. Pakistan is about the same size. They have more roads. We probably have same number of vehicles, or they have even more. Yet, their fuel consumption is a third of ours. So who is drinking the balance?
Obi is also emphasizing that he is a Nigerian candidate and not a southeastern candidate, and will negotiate with all agitating groups around the country so as to quell the spate of insecurity across the country.
I'm contesting as a Nigerian. I don't want people to vote for me because I'm an Igbo man, because I'm from Southeast. I don't want anybody to vote for me because people don't buy bread cheaper because they're from that zone. I don't want anybody to vote for me because I'm a Christian. I don't want them to vote because it's my turn. It's not inheritance. It is the turn of Nigerians to take back their country.
A point of contention among Nigerians is the epileptic power sector, which the Labour Party presidential candidate said will be tackled by drawing from models that have worked in other African countries.
Egypt is just exporting electricity now to Europe. Egypt is a third world country. If Egypt can do it, Nigeria can do it.
The Labour Party presidential candidate is insisting that Nigeria can be salvaged by purposeful and honest leadership that will manage the country's resources like he did in Anambra State, and is boasting that he is the most qualified of all the contestants that have thrown their hearts into the ring. Yusuf Akogu, Trust Television News, Abuja.
Well, that's very interesting. You know, that particularly the last clip, it just tells you that it looks like candidates are celebrities.
Yeah, exactly. All the candidates actually.
Well, I didn't see you in that picture.
No,
where were you?
I wasn't there. I was in the background.
Well, that's quite interesting. Well, let's take a quick break now. When we come back, we're going to take a look at the papers this morning. Stay with us.
There is danger looming everywhere, not only affecting us, but affecting the whole country.
Ni at least dai na wasa iri buhu 10 na shinkafa. Ruwan biniyo ya zo ya mamaye, sannan na loddo kuma ya zo ya kara.
Tauta yi asara, taraba ta yi asara.
Most of the flood we are seeing is a fingerprint of climate change. We are having rainfall uncertainty.
The real person that's supposed to know and avert its effects is left in the doom.
Akwai matsalan abinci a jihar Taraba, amma Najeriya. depends on where you find that they look at the same.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that.
Welcome back, and thanks for staying with us on Daybreak right here on Trust TV. Now it's time for us to take a look at the front pages of the newspapers. And of course, we'll start with Daily Trust newspaper. Major headline on the front page reads, exclusive. I'll dialogue with IPOB, other agitators, says Peter Obi. And it actually comes with riders here. It says cumulative leadership failure cause agitations, and I'm not an Igbo candidate, and I'll use North to develop Nigeria. Moving further down the front page, talking about some international news now. Ethiopia, Tigray ceasefire as Obasanjo facilitates talks. Details of that are on page 6. FG to establish 3.5 billion naira space museum in Abuja. Details of that on page 30. And 18 foreigners arrested for possessing voters' cards. Right at the bottom of the front page there, EFCC raids Kano Forex Market, arrests BDC operators. For details of that, you turn to page 5. Going towards the top of the front page, below the nameplate, Finance Minister, Budget DG, Accountant General sabotaging Buhari's anti-graft war, and this is according to reps. You're on your own, or your PDP leaders slam Makinde over Tinubu. Now, coming back to the economy, CBN's Naira redesign triggers panic buying of grains and price hike. Details of that can be found on page 25. Now, these are the major stories on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning.
Well, let's take a look at some more stories on This Day. And This Day newspaper is leading with a story about Atiku. Shatima's statement denigrates business that employs thousands of workers. And the writers there, you can see, maintains politics, doesn't confer license to be reckless, says Tinubu's running mate should apologize to Nigerian workers employed by his businesses. Dele Momodu, ex-VP, remains one of the biggest employers of labor in Nigeria. You'd find other interesting stories as well on This Day newspaper. MFLA, weak infrastructure, low income, others hampering digital financial integration. Obiora puts volume of e-Naira in circulation at 2.10 billion Naira. ShopRite, Sahad stores, Eirano, others embrace digital currency. And on page 10, you see the story about Oshomole. Fuel subsidy has been huge source of fraud for long. Sounds very interesting. Details of that story is on page 10. And then PDP drags APC to court over alleged unlawful convention. That story is on page 43. And then you see the one about it's payback time. Shatima tells Hausa community in Lagos. These are the major stories on This Day.
Next, we'll take a look at a Leadership newspaper, and it has this major story on the front page. 2 months after Leadership queries, U.S. Embassy yet to speak on Bagoda Kalto's death. That is on page 4. And it comes here with riders, refuses to respond to letters and emails by Leadership. Ex-U.S. envoy Russell Hanks fingered in Durban hotel bombing, now elusive. And again, police DSS keep mum over call for investigation. And still talking about other things on the front page of the Leadership newspaper. Politics specifically. INEC to spend 355 billion naira on a 2023 polls. And still talking politics. 2023 PDP New Generation unveils Youth Campaign Council. Details of that on page 11. Cabal won't run my government, says Atiku, and that is on page 7. While security threats under control, presidency reassures Nigerians. That is another story on page 7 of the Leadership. Going towards the top of the front page, terrorists demand 30 million naira ransom for 39 abducted Katsina children. Details of that on page 9. And Rivers releases 78 billion naira for projects, and that is on page 7 of the Leadership newspaper. Now, those are the major stories on Leadership newspaper this morning.
On the Punch this morning, Forex crisis. EFCC arrests 87 Forex dealers in Abuja and Lagos. And the writers there say Forex traders angry as agency conducts more raids, seizes phones. Bauer meets senior bank officials, Dealers Association. And then licensed dealers back raids, share pros and cons. And then there's a very interesting pictorial there that shows you where Ganduje begs Lagos Hausa communities to back Tinubu Shetima. Details of that story is on page 6. And then just right above the nameplate there, floods, federal government okays 506 billion east-west road contract. You'd see the story about aggrieved presidential aspirants have a right to complain. That's according to the APC. Power, Senate to grill minister over 147 billion naira project. And that story is on page 22. Katsina abduction, woman abducted while raising wedding money. That's sad and interesting. At the same time, that story is on page 28. And then you see the story about defying Davido's nanny cook may face charges for negligence. Oil theft, 134 ships rust as court cases drag. Those stories are on pages 16 and 17 on The Punch.
Next newspaper we'll look at is the Guardian newspaper, and it focuses on the Afenifere issue, where it carries this headline: Afenifere, I remain leader, says Adebanjo as Fashoranti returns. And it comes with riders here, says Fashoranti Afenifere meetings will now hold in Akure, while Adebanjo says old age caused Fashoranti to be dragged into this mess. Yoruba leaders mum on leadership tussle, while Adewale says the endorsement confirms with creation and ethics of Afenifere. That is the major story on the front page of the Guardian newspaper. Going down the front page now, 2023 PDP asks court to sack all APC candidates and Adamu-led NWC, and that is on page 6. Anyauku mourns Mbazulike Amechi, and that is on page 2 of the Guardian. Right below the nameplate here is the pulse. WHO, that's WHO, alerts to circulation of 8 tainted baby syrups, and that is on page 3. Adeshina Akufo-Addo, others pitch African opportunities to global investors. Another headline here reads: Obaseki dismisses CBN's planned Naira redesign as political. And Rivers releases 78 billion naira for completion of project and award of new ones. That is also on page 2. Now, these are the major stories on the Guardian newspaper this morning.
And on the Nation newspaper, 2023, APC's unbeatable in Lagos, says Tinubu. Shetima Ganduje rally Ariwa community, APC presidential candidate preaches unity. You'd find other stories as well on the Nation this morning. Federal High Court names task force on pre-election cases. Canada plans to welcome 1.4 million migrants from Nigeria. Others. That's interesting. Afenifere drops Adebanjo as acting national leader. Rivers government okays 78 billion for completion of projects. Others. Flooding are planned to avert food shortage by federal government. Shell votes $1 million to support victims in Niger Delta. And then road housing project contractors owed 956 billion, says Fashola. Then you see the story about World Health Organization predicts 30% rise in Africa's cancer deaths in 20 years. These are the major stories on the Nation newspaper this morning.
All right, the next newspaper we're going to be looking at is the Sun newspaper, and carries this headline on the front page: 40 farmers kidnapped in Katsina. Atiku Tinubu continue personal attacks. Now, that is the major story on the front page of the Sun newspaper. And FX challenge worsens as dollar scarcity hits banks. That's talking about the foreign exchange issue. And of course, ministers, officials understanding confrontation fights, says reps. And going towards the bottom of the front page there, INEC to spend 355 billion naira on 2023 elections. Now, that is another interesting one on the front page of the Sun newspaper. Now, these are the major stories on the front page of the Daily Sun this morning.
Well, there you go. Now it's time for us to take a look at these stories and do a proper review of the story. And we have in the studio Nasra Lawal, Editor-in-Chief, Dateline Nigeria, as usual, here to talk to us. Good morning and welcome to Daybreak.
Good morning. It's good to be here.
Well, we have quite very interesting stories on our front pages this morning, but exclusive to us, the Daily Trust, where we had a conversation with Peter Obi, the presidential candidate, and he's saying our dialogue with IPOB, other agitators, and some of the writers there says cumulative leadership failure caused agitations. I am not an Igbo candidate. I'll use North to develop Nigeria. Quite very interesting comments, I must say. What do you think about his assertions?
Well, whoever becomes the president in 2023, actually, it will be good for him to, for her, because we also have a female candidate in the race, to actually dialogue with all these agitators, like he said. It will be good to know, for instance, what IPOB is actually fighting for. But attempting to do the dialogue is one thing, and then the other parties agreeing to come to dialogue is also another thing. Like other agitators like the Boko Haram, the ISWAP and what have you, they are not interested in anything dialogue. They have an agenda and they are like 100% committed to pursuing that agenda. So now that Peter Obi is actually saying this, I think it's very important. Nigerians will now understand how he feels, what he thinks about all these agitations. And honestly, believe me, without, coming to dialogue with most of these people that are carrying arms and what have you, we may not be able to achieve much, because I don't think, even if it is, for you to have your own country, is something that you will be able to do just by carrying weapons. In the end, you will have to all come to the negotiation table and then be able to reach a stand. And he also talked about so many other things, like he is not an Igbo candidate. Of course, you expect him to say that. And that's for Nigerians to actually decide. If they see him as one, there is actually nothing he can do about that. But it's also good that he's coming out to say that, because already so many people are saying the race is being ethnicized already, because you have somebody from the north, you have also somebody from the southwest, and him coming from the southeast. There is that possibility of all the zones, deciding to just go with their own, and which will not be good for Nigeria. So I think it's good that he's coming out to say this, that Nigerians should treat him based on what he is offering, and not necessarily because he comes from the southeast.
Well, you also touched on another issue, which is the issue of subsidy. And we've heard this song and dance before, most especially from the current administration. They said they were going to remove subsidy, they were going to do away with it. A timeline was given, that timeline came, and now it has been shifted to something else, and we're still in the middle of it. Recently, there has been reports of how bad oil theft actually is, because he talked about the consumption numbers, that we are consuming so much products, but we are not supposed to have those numbers on it. Looking at the whole entire petroleum industry and what he has said about it, is there any hope that maybe if he does become president, there's any hope that he will be able to implement these? Because just like I said, we've had this song and dance before.
Well, he is now saying it, and just like you said, it's only when he becomes the president that you will be able to hold him to account, over all the things that he is now saying. But I think I want to agree with him that our consumption, honestly, the figures that people are, or the NNPC rather, is bandying, I don't think it's credible, because like he said, our population is just like that of Pakistan, and then they have more roads, they have so many other things that we actually don't have, and then he's wondering how it will be possible for Nigeria to be consuming that much amount of fuel, while Pakistan is doing with much less. And he is actually not the first person to do that, because even the Controller General of the Nigerian Customs Service actually said that it will be impossible, for Nigeria to be able to be consuming millions of liters, daily. So what basically he's trying to say, even the subsidy, the subsidy that the government is paying, actually very few people are benefiting from it. I don't want to believe, or I'm not one of those who think the subsidy thing is entirely bad. No. If the government can actually follow up on the money to see where the money is ending, I think it's going to be a good thing. But at the moment, what we are having, those who are into the business are actually the ones who are benefiting. They will collect from the government and then also collect from the people, which is very bad. So it's good that he's telling us his position on subsidy, and I think Nigerians should keep watch, so that if perchance he becomes the president, they will have so many things to hold him to account over.
You're talking about subsidy. We're also seeing Oshomole saying that subsidy has been a huge source of fraud for a very long time. Why do you think he's making this statement at this time?
Well, it has always been, and Oshomole is one of the front runners of the Tinubu campaign. So I see it as an attempt, to say that even though you have an APC administration at the moment, it's not as if all the policies that they are pursuing, we also like part of it. That we also have our own idea of how things should be done, and people should treat us based on that, not necessarily because the present APC government is, going ahead with the subsidy. Because if you remember, even the president, at a point, even to this time, I don't think he believes that actually the subsidy, there is any subsidy in the consumption or production of petroleum resources in the country. So honestly, I see Oshomole basically as trying to say maybe by the time a Tinubu government is in place, we'll make sure that the right thing is done. Because at the moment, what they are passing for subsidy is actually fraudulent.
Well, there are lots of talking points when it comes to Nigeria and it comes to Nigerian politics. And of course, I think we've always said this, and it has been like a mantra that's been chanted. Let's do issue-based politics. Let's focus on the issues. Let's talk about the issues. Recently, and most of the papers actually carry that, there's been some mudslinging between political opponents and the rest of it. Shetima says this, Atiku says that, and there's lots of mudslinging between them. How good is this, or how good or how bad is this for the polity at this time, since we're not focusing on the issues, they're actually focusing on each other?
Well, I think I'll blame the generality of Nigerians for things like that. Believe me, if Nigerians are to decide that we don't want to hear, all the negative things you have to say about your own opponent, just tell us exactly what you intend to do when you become elected, things will begin to change. But if you go on all the social media platforms, you'll see that even the followers, basically that's what they talk about. Nobody is talking about anyone's ability to do A, B, C, or D. No, it's your ability to be able to drag your opponent in the mud. That's what people are actually after. And then if you look even at the stories, honestly, all these stories that I wouldn't even want to call them stories, are actually the ones that are having all the clicks.
Yeah,
when people are talking about real issues, nobody pays attention. So I blame, like I said, I will blame the generality of Nigerians.
So basically now this is a tactic employed by the candidates to keep attention on themselves.
Yes, because you actually look for what your people want, and then you give them the material so that they decide what to do with it.
Well, that's interesting, but a lot of people would say, well, by now, we thought Nigerians might have learned their lesson. and then maybe something will be different this time around. But it seems like we're still going in a circle, and we're still back.
I think
to
4
that
years
point.
is such a long period for Nigerians now that after in every election cycle we'll say, okay, fine, this is what we have learned, and then before it comes back again after another 4 years, we have all forgotten, and then we go back to where we actually were, because these are issues that have been there all along,
over and over.
and we keep talking about them, and we say we're going to make a change, but unfortunately it doesn't happen, and we're seeing the same thing now.
Yeah, you know, sadly, we are we have like a very short attention span in Nigeria. You know, you may be talking about a serious issue. For instance, talking about maybe a government official embezzling money in his trust and things like that. And then the moment you have like a Manchester City versus Liverpool, that's the end of it. Nobody will talk about what the minister did or what the official did. We will all concentrate on what is happening, you know, in the Premier League, which is quite unfortunate. So that's actually the problem that we have. Our attention to details, you know, is actually very short. Once there are new things, we just move on. Like so many people are even saying, if you look at the Naira redesign that is at the moment, some are already saying, no, the government is just introducing it just to divert attention. So attention from what?
What exactly?
Because right now you have so many fuel queues, you have so many things that
too many problems.
So many problems that you can talk about. But like I said, once there is something, you know, in the entertainment industry or the sporting arena, then that's the end of it. Nobody talks about the important issues anymore.
Very interesting. Well, another very disturbing news, well, it's the interesting story that has been making rounds on social media, even on TV, that has been reported, is the issue about EFCC raiding, you know, forex market. We're seeing in Kano, there's also that raid, you know, that happened just yesterday. I was speaking to one of the BDC operators who was taken into custody by the EFCC, and they had to sleep over, you know, in the EFCC office, and they were just told, okay, we just want to question you. And some of them said, we are licensed operators by the CBN, why are we being taken into custody? And I'm sure you reported that as well. So I just want to hear your comments about that raid.
Let me start by saying that I'm happy you made the clarification that you called the BDC to find out, you know, what happened to him. I thought you were actually trying to transact some money. But honestly, if you look at it, I don't think this is a problem we'll be able to solve by just raiding the BDCs. You know, if there is a demand for something, actually there is little or nothing you can do to stop that demand, because people actually want it. And I blame the forex regime we have in the country for things like this. Why should you have the dollar selling at official rate, selling at around 440 naira, and then you call it the parallel market, where you can actually sell it 800 or above? So what do you expect people to do? If I have some dollars, actually I wouldn't take it to the official sources. I will take it to where I will be able to make money.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So it's left to Nigeria, that's the authorities, to actually come up with the best way of handling this, which is unifying all these forex markets, so that we have just one regime. You know, it's either you use that or then you opt out of it completely. Because why should you be going to maybe a bank and then accessing dollar at, like I said, 414 naira, and then taking it outside? And then by raiding the people, there are so many people that are actually don't have any case to answer. You know, it's their money, and then you allowed this system to actually operate. So you can't blame them for going to participate, to patronize a system that you believe yourself to be legal.
Absolutely.
So if you think that system is wrong, that system is not good, what you should do is to make sure it doesn't exist anymore. It's not for you to be going after people you know, to be frustrating them when they are actually trying to make one or two things out of their own hard-earned money. But if you have a case, you know, that you can actually establish that there is a case of wrongdoing, then by law you have that mandate. You should be able to do that, whether we are talking about redesigning the currency or not, whether we are talking about high demand for foreign exchange and things like that.
Well, there are actually some belief that the BDCs are providing an essential service, because these, just like you said, there's a high demand for these dollars, and commercial banks are really not cutting it when it comes to meeting the supply.
Absolutely.
So if we do away with the parallel market, as you say, wouldn't that cause serious pandemonium in the economy?
Well, I don't think so, because our currency of transaction at the moment is the naira. We are here in Nigeria. If you want foreign currency, you should get it wherever you want to spend it. Not, you know, it shouldn't be our responsibility, you know, to satisfy the demand for dollar. Because how many people are actually demanding for the dollar? Like we said, so many of those that are demanding for the dollar, you will see that maybe they have kids studying abroad, you know, maybe they are looking for it to be able to maybe access medical treatment abroad, or things like that. Some are actually just trying to access it to go, is it shopping, international. And
so basically it's just rich people.
Yes, basically just the rich people. But you see that the impact will now be felt even by those who have no idea, you know, how that market even operates.
Some of them haven't even seen a dollar before.
And then they are also like the major, you know, victims of the things that are happening. So, like I said, if whoever is interested in accessing all these foreign currencies, honestly, he should be able to do that. The government should have no business, you know, trying to support him. If it is maybe an importer, you know, that then you can make the argument that probably what he's trying to import, the nation will benefit. Probably he's employing thousands of people, or even if they are very few, but at least some people will benefit. But in this case, who are benefiting from all the dollars that, and if you go to the banks and see the kind of queues that are actually being formed every day, you know, people just waiting for you to go and lodge, you know, your dollars so that they can access it. And what do? The moment they get it,
they go to
the parallel market and see what they can do. Actually, some BDC operators, what they do, they even go to the banking hall and just wait for those who will be you know, withdrawing from their domiciliary accounts, you know, so that they pay them right there. You don't even have to.
Sometimes it's just easy, you know, doing it with the BDCs. You have more access and you get it prompt. But in the banks, it's so difficult. They make it so.
Well, because so many people are actually accusing even the banks, you know, of supplying the parallel market because they are in business to make money. They are not like here as a charity organization. So if they can be taking all the dollars that they have to the BDCs, to the parallel market, honestly, I wouldn't blame them because we allowed that system to thrive.
Well, it looks like we have a lot of work to do there.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, there's this another very interesting one before we move on to other issues. The one about federal government to establish 3.5 billion space museums in Abuja.
Well, it's a good one, but...
Do you need that at this point?
Yeah, it's a good one because we are talking about the fact that we are not actually making much from the things that we have, you know, like the tourism industry, our museums and what have you. But without doing like the right thing, you will end up spending your money and then there will be nobody to patronize it. And if that happens, then you will have failed but right now there is so much actually to be made. from things like this. And because even the world over, attention is beginning to move away from all this fossil fuel and things like that. People are now trying to see what they can do, with what they have, so that they will be able to make money out of it.
All right. Well, let's move slightly away from that. For a while now, I mean, we celebrated the fact that we were not talking about insecurity for a very long time, because there was a time whereby whenever you pick up the newspapers, you listen to the news, that is what dominates everything. But there has been a lull. But unfortunately, one of the major incidents that actually occurred and is being reported by the papers is the kidnap of 39 children in Katsina. And we heard one of the papers saying that these terrorists are actually demanding for 30 million naira as ransom for these children. Will we ever see an end to this?
You see, sometimes, anyway, you just have to appreciate our security forces, because they are doing quite a lot. And actually what they did was responsible for the lull that you talked about. But unfortunately, sometimes we become, is it complacent? Because anytime you think you have made some gains, then you tend to withdraw and maybe rest and believe that things are over. But the criminals are also paying attention. Once they see an opportunity, once they see a window, they try to use it. Because what do? Basically, that's the only thing they know. They are criminals, they are into criminalities, so you don't expect them to all the preachings that we are making that people should go to the farm. No, they know about the farms.
Exactly.
And they have decided that they are not going into that. What they are, because as far as they are concerned, they get all the money that they want to get, through the criminal enterprise. So it's actually left for the security agents, not to rest, to maintain the momentum, to be on it, so that all the gains that they make are not reversed by all these bandits and criminals. And anytime you hear about, the money that they are demanding, maybe you begin to see why the Central Bank of Nigeria is trying to redesign the currency, because maybe if you do that, there may be no money for even those who may want to take the ransom to all these criminals. They may not be able to access it. But like we said, the criminals also flow with the time. They may tell you to, instead of bringing money, to bring a brand new motorcycle. There are so many things that they do. So the security agencies and the government, should make sure that we are doing, what we are supposed to do. That's protecting lives, and property, because most of the people that are actually living in villages and communities outside the metropolis and what have you, they're having a difficult time. You can't go to the farm. Like even in the case of Katsina, they said one of the people actually paid a 3 million naira levy to the bandits, but he couldn't give them all the money at once. So because of that, they decided to strike and abduct these small children that are actually looking forward to it. Because without that, what do you expect them to do?
Well, that is quite unfortunate. We do hope that things can get better, and of course we'll see the last of it. All right, Nasrullah, thank you very much for coming on the show. Editor-in-Chief, Dateline Nigeria. Thank you very much for the beautiful insights and of course the analysis.
Thank you for having me.
All right, now this is where we will end the newspaper review on Daybreak this morning. The show continues. Do stay with us.
But in a situation where you find that they look at the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
I have said that.
This is the road leading leading up to the Lokoja Bridge from Abuja. And as you can see, tankers carrying fuel, trucks carrying livestock, perishables, and commuters trying to make their way from point A to point B have all been slowed down as a result of the flooding going on in Lokoja.
As I tell you, so my house is inside water like this.
This is my house. This music is my house.
We have no option than to come here and look for what we chop.
This water have really spoiled many things. Even as I'm talking to you, I'm not in my own house.
I want to encourage them and assure them that their government, the governor they elected had come to see them, and government officials have been going there to see them. They are not in this alone. We are with them.
TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
Welcome back. Good morning and welcome to Daybreak, reaching you live from the nation's capital city. I'm Zainab Bala.
It is top of the hour, 8 a.m. Daybreak on Trust TV. I am Ibrahim Yusuf.
Our headlines for you this morning. 2023 appropriations, reps declined consideration of foreign affairs budget over infractions.
And Boko Haram insurgency, Zulum awards 300 million naira scholarship to 300 orphans.
EFCC raids Kanu's forex markets, arrests BDC operators.
And now for the details. At least 8 Bureau de Change operators have been arrested following the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission raid on Wapa Forex Market in Kano. It was gathered that operatives of the Kano command of the Anti-Graft Agency stormed the Forex Market on Tuesday evening with about 8 vehicles and heavily armed personnel, a situation which threw the market into pandemonium. This came after marketers in Kano said they heard that the Anti-Graft Agency had earlier swooped on their colleagues in Abuja, arresting some in relation to the recent hike in the price of the dollar at the parallel market. Confirming the operation, a senior staff of the agency said the raid was conducted as part of the agency's efforts to support the federal government to arrest the recent hike of foreign exchange.
Borno State Governor Professor Babagana Umar Zulum on Tuesday flagged off a scholarship scheme worth 300 million in support of 300 orphans whose parents died as volunteers under the Civilian Joint Task Force, vigilantes and hunters. The volunteers were involved in fighting Boko Haram and ISWAP alongside the Nigerian military and other armed forces in Borno State. Zulum at the launch held at the multi-purpose hall of the government house in Maiduguri said the 300 million would cover all educational needs of the 300 orphans throughout their basic education levels in the first stage before further support at future levels of education. The governor had during his 2020 budget presentation promised support for the orphans under the Borno Hero Support Program.
Meanwhile, the House of Representatives Committee on Foreign Affairs on Wednesday declined to consider the budget proposals of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs over what it described as administrative infractions and non-adherence to the Appropriation Act. The lawmakers during the ministry's budget defense accused the minister of asking foreign missions not to comply with several communications sent by the House of Representatives. The lawmakers noted that the refusal by missions and embassies to constitute their tender board and render an account of their administrative charges following the directives of the minister is against Section 10 of the Appropriation Act. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Geoffrey Onyema, in his response, denied the accusations by the lawmakers, adding that at no time did he issue directives to officials of his ministry, embassies and missions abroad to disregard the directive of the National Assembly. The lawmakers, however, resolved not to consider the proposed 2023 appropriation of the ministry pending when all missions are directed to comply with Section 10 of the 2022 Appropriations Act as amended.
We have called the attention of the minister to this act, but he has continued to direct the missions not to obey this law in spite of receiving about 4 letters on the issue, including the latest one of 6 September 2022. In addition to the above, Section 7 of the Appropriation Act 2022 as amended captures inter alia that the Minister of Finance shall ensure that funds appropriated under this act are released to the appropriate agencies and or organs of government as and when due, provided that no funds for any quarter of the fiscal year shall be deferred without prior waiver from the National Assembly. In total disregard for the above, the ministry has continued to direct missions to retain and spend monies in their capital accounts without any waivers from the National Assembly. A 23 September 2022 letter by this committee that was sent to the ministry as a reminder to earlier ones still did not stop the ministry from flouting the laws of the land. Being aware that administrative charges have been approved at the missions by Mr. President, this committee, in line with Sections 80, 3 and 4 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended, has also observed that in total disregard to what the law says, the minister has continued to authorize the spending of monies generated through administrative charges demissions without being appropriated by the National Assembly.
We have given the directives, I've signed up on it, that they can set up, as you said, Mr. President has assented to it, so we have no problems. We're not flouting it in any way, and I have certainly never sent or signed anything to any mission to tell them to disregard those requirements.
Well, there you go. Now let's take a look at some more news this morning on the program. Presidential candidate of Labour Party, Peter Obi, says he would immediately discontinue the failed subsidy regime if he becomes the country's leader, describing it as an organized crime, which is only benefiting a few rich Nigerians. Obi, who spoke on Wednesday at the headquarters of the Media Trust Group in Abuja, said the concept of subsidy, right from records of consumption of fuel, was steeped in corruption. The Labour Party presidential candidate also spoke on other pressing issues. Yusuf Akogu reports.
It appears that all the presidential candidates of the four leading political parties are in agreement that fuel subsidy must go. The question is how soon, considering that the present administration had set the exit date for subsidy for June next year, the month after it leaves office. For the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, exiting subsidy will be an immediate thing so that proper investment could be made in sectors that need to be invested in.
Subsidy is organized crime. I will not allow any form of criminality as president of Nigeria. The amount of fuel they say we consume cannot be consumed by this country. There's an empirical evidence. We are about the same size as Pakistan. Pakistan, we are about 210, 220. Pakistan is about the same size. They have more roads. We probably have same number of vehicles, or they have even more. Yet, their fuel consumption is a third of ours. So who is drinking the balance?
Obi is also emphasizing that he is a Nigerian candidate and not a Southeastern candidate, and will negotiate with all agitating groups around the country so as to quell the spate of insecurity across the country.
I'm contesting as a Nigerian. I don't want people to vote for me because I'm an Igbo man, because I'm from Southeast. I don't want anybody to vote for me because people don't buy bread cheaper because they're from that zone. I don't want anybody to vote for me because I'm a Christian. I don't want them to vote because it's my turn. It's not inheritance. It is the turn of Nigerians to take back their country.
A point of contention among Nigerians is the epileptic power sector, which the Labour Party presidential candidate said will be tackled by drawing from models that have worked in other African countries.
Egypt is just exporting electricity now to Europe. Egypt is a third world country. If Egypt can do it, Nigeria can do it.
The Labour Party presidential candidate is insisting that Nigeria can be salvaged by purposeful and honest leadership that will manage the country's resources like he did in Anambra State, and is boasting that he is the most qualified of all the contestants that have thrown their hearts into the ring. Yusuf Akogu, Trust Television News, Abuja.
Stay with us on Trust TV's Daybreak. The show continues after this break. Do stay with us.
There is danger looming everywhere, not only affecting us, but affecting the whole country.
Ni at least dai na wasa iri buhu 10 na shinkafa. Ruwan biniyo ya zo ya mamaye, sannan na loddo kuma ya zo ya kara.
Tauta yi asara, taraba ta yi asara.
Most of the flood we are seeing is a fingerprint of climate change. We are having rainfall uncertainty.
The real person that's supposed to know and avert its effect is left in the doom.
Akwai matsalan abinci a jihar Taraba, amma Najeriya.
All right, welcome back. If you are just joining us, this is Daybreak on Trust Television. It's time for us to take a look at our first discussion on the program this morning. Now, Nigeria launching the startup bill is the latest buzz that has brought excitement to many, including startup founders, employees, and graduates. On October 19, 2022, President Muhammadu Buhari officially signed the startup bill into law, creating the Startup Act 2022. Now, the Nigeria Startup Bill project is a collaboration between the Nigerian tech sector and the presidency to utilize jointly developed roles to realize the potential of its digital economy fully. But there is a relief in the industry due to this initiative to promote startups and rising digital businesses in Nigeria, because there has been a need for a legal framework governing startup operations. Now, let's take a look at what this means for the operators and implication on tech companies. We have in the studio Emmanuel Okwara. He's GNR MD EQ Markets Global to share his thoughts on this morning. Good morning and welcome to Daybreak.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
All right. So the startup bill was signed into law. What does it? What does this mean for the tech space in Nigeria? Because it is beginning. We're beginning to see lots of interest there. Lots of tech companies coming up with developing solutions and all that. What does actually the signing of this bill into law? What does it mean for the tech industry?
Okay, thank you very much. Actually, this the Startup Act was a joint initiatives between the tech gurus in Nigeria and the presidency. Started around May 2021, and of course, you know, startup are actually businesses that want to grow and thrive.
Right.
You know, Nigeria, owing to our population, we have a whole lot of new businesses, a whole lot of startups without support. So what this bill does is is a holistic framework to offer support, governmental support to startups, and also to regulate the business so that startups can actually do business properly and also get some incentives from government. So it just brings together fresh talents, disruptors in the society, and also offers governmental support. No longer people starting up businesses, doing it on their own, you know, having issues. Because the major issue we normally have in the tech system, especially in Nigeria, is funding. If there's no partnership, you see businesses are going down when it gets to the launch stage. So what this Nigerian Startup Act has come to do is to create an enabling environment for startup businesses that are coming up to launch, scale, and thrive in the country.
So at the moment, would you say tech companies are doing well? Tech startup companies in Nigeria are thriving well?
As at 2020, Nigeria already has 3,300 tech companies, startups in Nigeria as at 2020. And if you check it, statistics I read somewhere, just the first 6 months of this year, the tech company startups in Nigeria has generated over $3.1 billion. And if you check in Africa, Nigeria is #1 in terms of producing tech gurus. After Nigeria, you get South Africa and then Kenya. Lagos alone is a very massive hub. We have over like 100 hubs. All these things are happening before this bill came into law. So you can imagine when government now comes in to partner, at least one of the requirements in the bill is that there's going to be a National Council for Digital Innovation and Entrepreneurship that is going to regulate and also offer some tax incentives You know, one of the things that kill businesses actually is when business is actually in the incubation stage and in the launching stage.
Right.
Before you know it, government operators comes to you and tell you need to pay tax of this and this and this. All those things helps to weigh down startups. So with this act, startups actually that meet the requirements will get some tax breaks, tax incentives, even get some grants from the government. At least this will help them scale up. Because all these acts, it came with over 9 frameworks that we can actually look into.
Okay. Well, I know of a company that actually started operations like almost 10 years ago.
Yes.
And another one that came on stream in like 2020. But they're still being considered as startups. What do you consider as what makes a startup business?
Okay, like if you check the Nigerian Startup Act, there's what we call startup labeling.
Okay.
So for you to know what kind of businesses can actually benefit from this. Now, in the startup labeling, they told us that it has to be a business that is less than 10 years.
Okay.
Less than 10 years. Number one, the business, the shares of it has to be a limited liability company, not a business name.
Okay.
And also, 51% of the shares has to be owned by Nigerians in the company. So this has already created a criteria for you to be termed as a startup to access these funds.
Okay.
Now, there's going to be like a startup portal. Before, new businesses that come up, there's always confusion. How do I get grants? How do I get support? But this startup portal is like every requirement is in that portal. People can actually access this portal and see to know if your business can meet the criteria of getting tax incentives.
Okay.
And there's what we call a Nigerian startup investment fund, seed fund, seed funding. These are fundings that government gives out to new startups to help their business. A lot of businesses in Nigeria are startups, honestly, because if you check most businesses, they are below 10 years. So it has created opportunities for businesses that started 2020 or let's say 2018 or so, of course, to go to the startup portal, provided you meet the criteria in the startup labeling to assess all the entitlements and benefits that the government has provided.
Well, you know, for some people, some might want to criticize, you know, the number of years because they are young people, you know, coming up and doing very interesting things in the tech industry. Some are barely 3 years, you know, in business and all of that. And some would say, well, because we're 3 years, that does not give us the opportunity to have access, you know, to some of these funds. Don't you think there's a bit of a gap in that regard?
No, there's no gap. If you check, the criteria is businesses that are less than 10 years. So even if you are a year, 2 years, 3 years, and you meet, it's not just the year of the business, it's a limited liability company. So right now, startups, we have a lot of startups that are not even registered, and it's not good. Now, startups now can actually register, go to the Corporate Affairs Commission, register as a limited liability company. And that can actually help and assist them access this fund. So there's not going to be any discrimination. What this is going to do is, there are already requirements, there's a portal that you can actually go in to see if you meet the requirement and assess that. Now, the good thing about it is that there are so many startups in the country. You can look at the Kuda banks, you can look at Flutterwaves, InterSwitch, OPay, a whole lot. Veloxy. These are businesses, most of them are already doing well. But it doesn't stop them from applying for this. Because if you check, every business right now is driven by innovation. And the good thing about these startups is this, that if you check aside from China, Africa is one of the continents that have a highest number of youths in population. And if you check, the people that are driving this startup are the young people. So it's going to be a huge benefit for us. And this is an opportunity to dominate the tech space in Africa.
Okay. Well, let's still talk about I'm still worried about the criteria that you actually mentioned. Now, let's take, for example, I start my company in 2011, all right? And I kept plugging away despite all the challenges and whatnot. I was swimming against the waters. I'm still there. But I'm able to grow my business to say, like, maybe to be worth 1 million or 2 or 3. But then some other person who starts this business in 2017 comes in and has more luck than I do and grows his business within those 2 years to have to like 20 or 25 or even maybe 50 million, that person can have access to these funds and this support that you're talking about from government. But because I was unfortunate enough to start my own company in 2011, even though I don't have as much money as the next person is, I cannot access those funds. I won't feel that is fair to me.
Well, you know, if there were a lot of considerations in this bill, you know, it was done between not just the government, the tech gurus, and the presidency. And when you look at it, when you look at startup, you look at 4 things. You look at capital, you look at the talent, infrastructure, and then regulation. And then normally, every business should at least give itself from 1 to 5 years. There will be challenges. There's the idea stage, there's the launch stage, and the scaling up stage. There are a lot of issues that might come in the first, second year. You have to understand the environment and then look for partnership and other ways, get support to scale up. So what they looked at is, if you check most of the businesses, if any business can survive 10 years, at least it has actually understood the environment. It's been able to pass the test of times, you know, and scale up. So that's why they said from first to 10 years, when we're having the launch and the scale up stage, at least 1 to 10 years. This should even actually help every business to scale. Every business, any business in Nigeria, with the country Nigeria right now, that have stayed more than 10 years, honestly, they've passed a lot of things. They should be able to scale up their businesses.
Even if you don't have the requisite capital or requisite injection of funds in your business?
Even if you don't have the required capital, like if you check, aside from this, we have in existence loans from governments. Some interest-free loans that government has actually established. Let's be honest. And also, those loans have been there for these startups to also access.
That's but even before the act
even before this Startup Act came into existence. So there has been credit facilities, there has been loans, but now this is like bringing a house. You know, remember, there's going to be a National Council for Digital Innovation and Entrepreneurship. So before, there are so many institutions that provide loans, and we don't really know the criteria, the requirements, how to go about it. But now, Nigeria's federal government has put together a startup portal. So if you are a startup already existent in Nigeria or already starting to do business, all you need to do is not need to be asking questions. Just go to the startup portal, look at the requirements. What do I need to do to access this startup seed funding? What do I do to get tax incentives? Everything has been put together in a portal for us to access.
So now you're saying that the implementation has started then?
Well, we've not seen the implementation yet. We're actually happy at the first stage, of which it's been signed into law. I just want to be very, very optimistic. You know, it's been signed into law. I want to believe that this will actually work well. It won't go like maybe other ones.
Sustainability is one thing as well.
Because if the government sees the opportunity, this is huge for the young ones. Imagine before now, Lagos has more tech giants than any other country in Africa. And what this is going to do is not just making Lagos the tech hub, but other states.
Right.
So you're going to have tech. We have over 100 tech hubs already right now. But right now, Lagos is not going to just produce more tech giants. We're going to have other states in FCT, Ibadan, other states, because government has now come into it to offer support. And I believe that the National Council is also going to have their branch offices, not just in Abuja or Lagos, but other states, that will make it easier for people to access the needed incentives for their business to thrive. Imagine we have over 3,300, and before this coming into law, and now this is coming in, we're going to have more, honestly. This is actually the kind of laws that actually develop countries. And the good thing is that we have more young people in the population.
Right.
It's not like Japan, you have more old persons. And now, people that play a key role in this tech are the young ones. So it's an opportunity. Already, Flutterwaves and InterSwitch are already unicorns. They're already generating over $2 billion.
That's a lot of
Yeah,
money.
that's a lot. So imagine if we have like 10 Flutterwaves in the country. Is enough, it will reduce unemployment. So I want to believe that the federal government should be able to see the opportunity in this. That's why if you check most of the bills that have been signed into law, this was actually a little bit faster because this will help the young Nigerians to scale up their business.
We look forward to seeing it come to life, you know. Well, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you so much.
We hope to have more deliberations with you in the future. When we call on you, I hope you'd oblige as well.
Thank you very much. I will.
All right, it's still Daybreak on Trust TV. We'll take a short break, and when we return, we'll take on other issues on the show. Just stay with us.
That's good. That's good to see you.
There is danger looming everywhere, not only affecting us, but affecting the whole country.
Ni at least dai na wasa iri buhu 10 na shinkafa. Ruwan biniyo ya zo ya mamaye, sannan na loddo kuma ya zo ya kara.
Tauta yi asara, taraba ta yi asara.
Most of the flood we are seeing is a fingerprint of climate change. We are having rainfall uncertainty.
The real person that's supposed to know and avert its effect is left in the doom.
Akwai matsalan abinci a jihar Taraba, amma Najeriya.
Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with us. Now, let's take a look at another issue that has been making the news in recent time. I'm talking about flood. Now, that flood is ravaging Nigeria is no news. The concerns, however, expressed by analysts were that major steps were not taken to address the extreme climate event as a routine work. Now, the biggest casualties are the huge number of rice farms that have been submerged. Communities in Kogi, Benue and Bayelsa suffered widespread crop losses, while pastoralists would encounter challenges in search of food as they move their livestock. Now, the analysts maintain that enough measures were not taken to confront flooding that has badly affected agriculture, since warnings were issued that the Cameroon Dam will be emptied. We have in the studio the Chairman, Northeast Commodity Association and Chairman of the Board of REFAN, Sadiq Umar Dawari. Good morning and welcome to Daybreak.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, sir. So the floods have come. Farmlands have been washed away and lots of crops have been lost. What is the implication for Nigeria going forward in terms of food shortages that might be witnessed due to this flood disaster?
Thank you very much. Let me first of all sympathize with the farmers across the country who incur a lot of losses as the result of this flood. And I believe government will take a quick measure to quickly support the farmers so that we can avert food crisis in Nigeria. Coming to issue of flooding, flood is a global problem. It is not in Nigeria alone. Most countries witness heavy flood this year, and because of climate change. Coming to Nigeria, particularly in the areas where floods has affected farmlands, affected villages and cities, people have incurred a lot of losses as a result of this. And the issue of flood is not just a one-day program. I'm happy His Excellency the President has now given a marching order that the Minister of Water Resources will coordinate with other relevant ministries to come up with a strategic plan to avert future occurrence of flood in Nigeria. Talking about our neighboring countries again, it is not only about Nigeria developing a plan. We also need to have good bilateral relationship with our neighboring countries. It's no longer a news that a dam in Cameroon called Lagdo Dam, a very big, a huge facility, a huge reservoir that even the promoters of those facilities doesn't know the quantum of water this facility is producing. So, and as such, they release it unannounced sometimes, and it caused a lot of havoc to neighboring states, particularly Adamawa, Taraba, Gombe, and the northeast states. So it's a very big problem to us in Nigeria, and we are happy again that NIMET, most cases predicts that there is an anticipation of having a heavy flood. And because of attitude of our people, particularly rural people in search of a means of livelihood, sometimes stay in areas that were initially meant as camp for farming during dry season. But they now convert those areas as permanent residence. So sometimes if there's heavy water, so it rampages the areas and sweep the entire villages or whatever. So we have experienced a lot of tragic situation this year in Nigeria, and we hope that government will quickly take up a step measure to avert this type of situation.
Okay. Now, recently we filmed a documentary in Adamawa State particularly, and some of the interviews and some of the revelations we got was that there has been money budgeted, to create a dam in Nassing-Hausa that would help, reduce the pressure of the water released from the Lagdo Dam. But every year we talk about it, but up until now there has been nothing that has been done in regards to that project. Could you just comment, do you know anything about that project, or what is the update with regards to that project?
I'm not sure, and I don't want to talk something that I'm not the basis. The issue of government earmark a certain amount of money to build a dam in Nassing-Hausa. I'm from Adamawa State. I'm from Fufore local government, particularly where Nassing-Hausa is located. I know the area. But talking about the facility in Cameroon, where the dimension of the dam ran into hundreds of kilometers. So issue of having a facility to maybe cushion the water at Nassing-Hausa, maybe there's a plan previously, but that alone cannot solve the problem. So as I've said earlier, I'm not sure whether government has earmarked certain amount of money to come up with the project. But issue of flood, you cannot just wake up one day and say that I will do a project that can avert flooding. This thing goes over a period of time. Flooding has been there for a very long period of time. So the relevant agencies need to critically look at what happened this year, what happened 2 years before, what happened previous 5 years or whatever, with the view of predicting what will happen so that they can develop measures. I mean, a long lasting solution. So, coming up that we need a dam in Dasin Hausa to avert this, then how about other states? This year, flooding cut across the entire nation. More than 32 states were affected. States in the northeast, states in the northwest, in fact, including south, the Imo state, right? There are a lot of states that are
Delta.
So, looking at it from climate situation again, it is not only issue of developing a dam or a reservoir in Dasin Hausa. I believe government need to come with a proactive measure in making sure that we take advantage of the flood. You know, we also need the water.
Absolutely.
The water. Now that we have a lot of flood, farmers need to take advantage of that because you have flooding everywhere. So during dry season, you have an opportunity to increase your capacity. If you have been cultivating a hectare or two previously, now that the water has taken over everywhere, so it's a good advantage for you to go and increase your capacity during the dry season and produce more.
Okay. Well, talking about producing more, let's talk about the farmers now, most especially rice farmers that were seriously affected by this. And there is an association for rice farmers, and they have been grossly affected by this. Lots of people have actually lost most, or if not all, of their farmlands and farm produce. What is the plan for these people? Is there any plan by the association?
Largely, yes, I'm a member of the Rice Farmers Association of Nigeria. In fact, as a national treasurer and a board member as well. So I sympathize with what has happened, and the only way we can solve this problem is to government to come up quickly to support these farmers. Farmers has incurred a lot of cost, not only their farmlands, even their houses were submerged, right? The entire livelihood of a common farmer in Nigeria today becomes something else. So he don't have anywhere to go because his house was submerged. He don't have farm to cultivate his crops now because it was also submerged. So we need quick intervention from the government.
So is there any charge being led by the association to take this plight of farmers to the government?
Yes, for the past 5 years, the association in close contact with the government. You are aware that the central bank has been supporting farmers through the commodity association by providing them with loan facility to support their own production. But the 2022 has come without support from the government, particularly the Anchor Borrowers program. I was here last 3 months. We emphasize and draw the attention of the government that there is high cost of agro input, and it will affect farming activities in Nigeria. The farmer has to sell all what he produced previous year to just buy 2 or 3 bags of fertilizer to support his own production. So it's a problem. Now, another problem again, flooding.
Right.
It has virtually affected. So we need government to quickly again come and support these farmers. We know very well that this is a loan facility and it has to be paid back. But there's a devastating situation. So if you need somebody to continuously produce and support production in Nigeria, then government also need to support him. We need the central bank governor to do what is right, to do what he has been doing. Because for the past 5 years, he has been supporting Nigerian farmers. In fact, he has been supporting the entire agricultural value chain. So he needs to come up again and support. Because if there is no support this period of time, I believe all the effort that was made by the government previously will just go away unnoticed, because food is a necessity.
Right.
If there is a crisis, God forbid, of food in Nigeria, then it is then that people will realize that a smallholder farmer that they've been looking as nobody is somebody that has been supporting Nigerians. You are also aware that over a period of, I think, 2-3 years, there's closed down of Nigerian borders with a very good intention by His Excellency the President to support local production. Or it's only spot areas where there are smugglings or whatever. But throughout this period, we're having a lot of rice, we have been having a lot of maize, You cannot go to market without seeing a bag of fertilizer or maize to buy. So this is a courtesy of the effort of a smallholder farmer. So we need government to continuously support the smallholder farmer in Nigeria so that we can avert issue of food crisis.
All right. But recently we've seen a gradual, steady increase in the price of rice in the market. The locally produced rice, actually, is actually going beyond the purchasing power of the ordinary person. Now with the floods that have actually come, and there are going to be losses and there'll probably be shortages, what does that mean to the price of rice right now in the market?
The issue of price hike in Nigeria is not issue of rice, maize, or agricultural commodities alone.
Okay.
Everything that you think of in Nigeria today, the price has increased, if not double. Think of building materials. Think of cars. In fact, think of aviation industry. Last 2 years, a ticket probably from Adamawa to Abuja is 18 to 24,000 naira. Today, a flight ticket from Adamawa to Abuja is about 120,000 naira. So it's the increase in the price of commodities, services and commodities in Nigeria is an issue of much serious concern. So the only way we can avert it is to government to take the shocks. A bag of fertilizer that used to be 8,000, 9,000 last year, today costs 22,000 naira. So we also need subsidy from the government. Let them look into it. Like what is happening? There are a lot of fertilizer blending plants that are coming up, yet the price keep on increasing. There are a lot of agrochemical producing companies that are coming up, yet the price still keep on coming up. So the government need to work closely with the producers, the blenders of the fertilizer, and probably stabilize the price of those agro inputs. You know that high cost of input is a recipe for hunger. Nigeria largely depends on the smallholder farmers. The people that are producing an acre, producing 1 hectare, they are the ones that are feeding this country. We don't have large-scale farmers. So a farmer that has been producing 1 hectare have to sell all his savings, all what he has produced last year just to buy few agro input to support. So it's a recipe for hunger. So the government need to come with a very good plan, work closely with those commodity associations, work closely with the manufacturers of agrochemicals, so that at least we cannot witness hunger and food crisis in Nigeria. You're also aware that the development partners, particularly the United Nations, the Food and Agricultural Organization, most of them, to some extent, predicted that there will be food crisis in Nigeria and most African countries. So we need to come up with a very good plan, or else we'll be in trouble.
Well, you emphasize so much on smallholder farmers, which is why I'm bringing this. Part of the interview that we had, for that documentary was a lot of people, the revelations that were made was that a lot of the smallholder farmers do not really know much about climate change. So when you mention climate change to a smallholder farmer, a lot of them were saying in Hausa, that was what they were saying. And so would you say there's enough sensitization to some of these smallholder farmers about what climate change actually means?
I will appreciate the effort of NIMED because I'm closely monitoring and watching their own predictions, and every season they roll out activities and inform farmers and indeed all Nigerians that we will likely experience a lot of rain, and as a result of that we may see flooding. So, and that is the effort of the commodity associations we are talking about. They are the ones that continuously need to engage their members. Some people don't listen to radios. Some people don't have access to television. In fact, even if they have the method, the timing, and whatever. Somebody is in his farm throughout the day. An announcement has been going on in TV and radio about the climate change, about issue of flooding. So those institutions need to work closely with those associations that have structure across the country. Most of these associations we are talking about have a structure at the national, have it at the state, local government, including the cluster. So they can help in disseminating the information, in making sure that Nigerians, to some extent, understood the issue of climate change and probably choose when and where to farm, so that at least they can reduce, to some extent, issue of flooding and other related natural disasters.
All right. I'm still bringing it back to the rice because I'm very, very interested in that, and I know a lot of Nigerians are actually interested in that as well.
Yes.
So a while back, there was a serious effort being made concerning the rice pyramids that were actually brought in by RIFAN and the federal government, and there was lots of noise being made about it to actually achieve a certain objective. Has that had the desired impact that was initially targeted?
Remember that before the coming of this present administration, governments spend a lot of money importing rice and other related food into this country. Remember also that whenever a bag of fertilizer is brought from either India, Thailand, as stated by our former minister, that it is also coming with an unemployment. What he is saying here is that whenever you rely on other countries to produce and give you, then you are exporting labor to that country. And that is why we are witnessing a lot of unemployment in Nigeria. Every small place you have seen in Nigeria that has waters has been turned into a rice farm in Nigeria today, courtesy of the present administration. So there is a lot of enlightenment. People are aware that the only way Nigeria can have self-sufficiency in terms of food is for them to embark on local production. And government, to some extent, has made funds available to the farmers. To some extent, has support processors. Before now, we only have few rice processing factories in Nigeria. But today, everywhere you go, you see a processing facility, telling you that there's a huge market in that sector. Rice is a commodity that most households today eat.
Yeah, it's a major commodity.
The major thing I'm telling you. And even the production has now increased. Previously, that the output per hectare is 4 tons. Sometimes it's not even up to 4 tons. But today, using best agronomic practice and enlightenment, people can produce much more than that, up to 8 tons per hectare. So there's a lot of enlightenment. People are aware and also know that the only way we can get out of this mess we are experiencing is to make sure that we support local production. And everywhere you see in Nigeria today are farmlands, civil servants, right? Also, apart from their own mandate as civil servants, they also have their own farmlands. We appreciate women. Women also key into farming.
Oh, that's interesting.
I'm telling you, there are a lot of farm women that are now fighting together with the men in local production, both rice, maize, and other commodities. So government has did very well in terms of enlightenment to make sure that Nigerians produce what we can eat. The only way forward is for them to sustain it, to continuously provide support to these farmers. We don't take issue of agriculture ad hoc. We are not interested in just bringing an ad hoc project probably 2-3 years and you close it down. No. People has to eat continuously. So government has to also continuously support farmers in this country so that we can be able to produce what we can eat, and if we have excess, then we can beat our chest and say that we are exporting commodities to other countries of the world so that we can earn foreign exchange.
But well, from the look of things, are we ever going to have excess? Because it looks like we're still short on food sufficiency.
Let me tell you, we have said that there is a lot of enlightenment, 1. 2, Nigeria is blessed with a lot of resources. The farm lands is there everywhere. There is a water resources everywhere. There is a good climate condition. Nigerians are very hardworking people. So the only thing is that we need to have a very good policy by the government so that this tempo can be sustained. I told you earlier that there's an increase in the production. We have been producing probably 2 or 4 tons per hectare before. There is much more than that now, up to 8-10 tons per hectare. So if there is an increase in the output, there is also enough awareness in the part of our people. Certainly we will have much what we can eat and export in the near future.
Okay. Well, I know you alluded to this earlier, but I still want to come back to it because a lot of people find it hard to understand. Usually, when you have a demand for something and there is excessive supply, just like you said, output has actually increased when it comes to these farm produce, when it comes to rice especially. It has been produced massively on a massive scale and it has improved over the years. What a lot of people are looking at is, if we have more production, that means we have more of this commodity in the market. Shouldn't the price be coming down instead of increasing?
People need to understand business. If you say that today a bag of fertilizer, a bag of rice, 50 kg for example, should cost 5,000 naira, people will be happy. Consumers will be happy. But the person that will be engaged as a business to do that will not be interested in doing that business because he will not have any profit out of it. So just like any other manufacturer, just like any other producer, a farmer also is an entrepreneur. He also needs to have value for what he is producing. Most importantly is that let's have availability. Issue of cost is another thing altogether. But what we need now is to have availability of rice, availability of maize. Now the price will stabilize. Where a producer will have value for what he has produced, then a consumer will also buy and consume without much stress. That is what we need now, to form and meet it an equilibrium. But the issue of people anticipating that because there is an increase in production, so the price has to come down to a level that it will not interest a producer again to produce, is also a problem to the country.
Right.
So let's keep on encouraging farmers to produce more. Let's also people to have a purchasing power, right? So that at least they can meet in an equilibrium where we'll have a win-win situation.
Well, quite very interesting,
yes.
But because of time, we have to go. Thank you so much, Mr. Sadiq Umar, for coming on the show this morning, and we hope to have further deliberations with you in the future.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I am very sure we will continue this conversation because it is an ongoing one and it's something that we really need to keep our eyes on. So thank you very much.
I'm always available.
And we love to eat rice.
We love rice, yes.
Why not?
We love rice.
Yes, we have witnessed rice pyramid. And I think in no distance time we'll also have a competition of people cooking rice again.
We love rice.
That will be lovely.
Yes,
thank you very much for coming on the program.
Thank you very much.
All right, and this is where we are going to draw the curtains on Daybreak this morning on Trust TV. We hope you had an amazing time being with us as we have enjoyed bringing it to you as well. I am Ibrahim Yusuf. Have a lovely day.
And I'm Zainab Bala. See you tomorrow.